a millisecond to like, call me when you get there,
Sure.
don't be stupid, and be safe. So okay, we are going to talk about the day in the life of an agent today. And there was a twofold purpose on why I wanted to kind of go around and ask you about yourselves and bucket list items, because I think really the bucket list is important, because if there's something that you're working towards, it's always in your head. And when you're setting goals, part of that needs to be what you want to achieve this year, something that's so strong and deep in your belly that you think about it every day and it drives you. Whether it's, Mary saying that you want to be in Luxembourg, what does it make you feel like? It's not something that you're speaking about in general terms. It becomes very specific so that you can set your day and your measurables, Shaheen, with how many phone calls you're making, how many deals you want to do, what's your income going to be, what's the cost of that bucket list, and what activities do you need to do on a daily basis to get you to that place. Does that make sense? And this is interactive, okay? If we were in the classroom, we would all be talking. We would be raising hands. We would be bringing up ideas. We would be talking about successes, even things that we may have failed at. Failures are huge to talk about as well, if you're willing to share them, because if you failed forward, nobody really gets anywhere. There's failures on the way to success. And if we're sharing those, everybody's learning from those as well. So I really wanted this to be interactive. So feel free at some point to just interject and bring in your own ideas and talking topics as well. Is that okay with everybody? Because it's going to get kind of boring with me here for an hour, no matter how many of the wonderful things that Lydia said about me. So I've been in, just so you know, I've been in the business, my son's going to be 25, so 25 years. I've been in the business as a licensed agent. I was helping Joe with his real estate business for a few years before that. And then, so it's probably been, I've been in and around real estate for 27, 28 years now. I do run the Spouses Selling Houses team. Last year, I believe we did about 53 sales transactions and about 16 to 20 rental transactions as well, for one of our best years ever. So I agree with all of you that 2020 in a lot of ways created some marvelous opportunities, and we feel incredibly blessed by all of our clients who trusted us to get them to their goal and their bucket list to make their moves in 2020. So really what today we're going to talk about is, I'm kind of going to, an overview is how to grow your business and run your business, set weekly and daily objectives, create accountability. We talk about building your database, script practice, lead generation. All of those things are part of, the real estate agent's day. And ironically, I just got off our coaching call with our MAPS Mastery coach. So talk about accountability. We have a conversation with our MAPS coach. Joe and I, every Friday at 9:30. And before we got off the call, he said, okay, for next week, what activities are going to take place? And we moved from a conversation to very specific measurables. So when we come to the call next week, he can say, did you have 25 conversations with your sphere of influence and those that are in your pipeline? Because the goal for our team for the first quarter is to have 15 new listings in order for us to get to our goals for 2021. So right now, I've lost sleep. We're not where we need to be right now. And that's in all honesty. So what are we going to do to fix that? And I think we're constantly, as real estate agents, looking at what goals did we set for ourselves. Shaheen, you had said 12 transactions for the year. And you're telling me that you had 2 transactions already ready to close. That's phenomenal. Shaheen starts to know where some of her numbers are. Now she knows through the remainder of the year, she needs 10 more closings to hit her goal of 12 closings. Did I understand you correctly with that, Shaheen, if you're not on a call? Let's go with that. Let's go with Shaheen's example. 12 closings, she's got 10 or 2 on the books right now. She's got 10 to go, 11 months to get 10 in. Does that seem like it's measurable? Yeah. Okay. So if Shaheen is at March, well, Shaheen's at February 14th or so, let's say, and she doesn't have someone under contract to close by the end of March, in the easiest terms, is she on schedule? Is she on pace?
I guess not necessarily, because she'd want like at least like average like 1 a month to get to her 12.
Average 1 a month to get to her 12, correct. And doesn't mean, we can look at it 2 ways. That's the easiest math. So if we take the easy math, it's 1 a month for any agent. Any agent, I don't want to keep pulling Shaheen out, but any agent who wanted to do 12 transactions this year, you'd want 1 a month. But you also have to do the math, meaning that if you wanted 1 every month, it means in the previous month, that property needs to be under contract. So if Shaheen wants to meet her goal for March, she's got about 3 weeks to put a property under contract so that it closes in March, if you want to be that strict with it. Does that make sense? Yeah. And if you're looking at your bucket list, now Mary Kay, let's go to your bucket list, if I can use it for an example. If you want to get to Luxembourg and you want to get dual citizenship, there's a cost surrounding that, correct? Now, granted, you don't have it yet, but eventually, if all works out in your world, I believe you will have a pilot in the family. Yes. But flying commercially to Luxembourg and staying there has a cost to it. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to have that trip, let's just extend it a little bit. If it's ready and it's booked, and maybe you take it a year from now. Okay, so you've got 12 months to get to that financial goal. What are the costs? Have you ever done the exercises to say, what are the costs surrounding that trip? Do we know, is it a $5,000 trip? Is it a $10,000 trip? Is it a $2,000 trip?
Well, it's going to be an extended trip, so probably closer to 7,000, I would say, between 5 and 10. But there's also a time cost too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you start to take, let's just use 5,000 as a number, okay? As you start working through now we know that 5,000 extra dollars needs to be out there that you can allocate to that. So as you start to relate that to how many transactions you need to do to support your family and then have that extra, you need to start to do the math. In the community where we live, Mary Kay, an average sale price with an average sale price of $250,000 should be right around a $5,000 or $6,000 commission check. So if you know what it costs to pay the bills in your house each month, and then how much you want to put away to get to that 5,000, now you're starting to work backwards and do some math on how many transactions you need to do. Because what I learned over my years is many times when we're setting goals, and this is where we're starting with some of this and setting goals on how we're going to build the activities to reach the goals, we set random goals. Meaning, I want to do 20 transactions for the year. Well, where'd 20 come from? And why 20? For agents that have been in the business before, when you're moving from 2020 to 2021, Tony, I don't know if you did this, if you're setting new goals for 2021, had you tracked to see what the increase in your business was for the last few years? If you were increasing your business by 10 or 15%, and I think we talked about this on some other webinars, if you're increasing your business by 10 or 15%, it was the ALC clinic, wasn't it, that we talked about this, or ALC retreat. Are you making educated decisions on how you're pushing yourself? You can be pushing yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone to exceed your numbers for this year over what you had in the past. And we did that, and it's scary to push, but you're now building off of a little bit more of an educated number versus a random number.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what that means is when, and I'm going to jump around in your book, if in your manual, if you're okay with that, if we go right to GPSs and 411s, there's the planning systems that are going to get us from point A to point B and eventually to the bucket list. Has anybody read The One Thing? Yes. Has anybody read it more than once? Okay. Since November, Mary, you've read it more than once.
No, I reread it probably once since then.
Okay, so you read it twice.
Yeah.
If you have not read The One Thing, get the book and read it. It's got a lot of pictures in it. It's a fast read.
Now we're talking. That's my type of book.
I tell you, and there's some color in it too. You know,
Right.
occasionally they use like some red. It helps you narrow down your activities. It is a business book. It's not necessarily, and it's a business book, but not just real estate agents read it. So many have read it to give you the ability to focus your attention daily on what you need to do to get to your bucket list and to get to your goals. What one thing can I do such by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary. And in a lot of ways in this industry, if you've read a book once, it's not enough. You haven't mastered it. Feel free to go back and read it again. Last year I had a goal. I was in Bold, which was another highly accountable training. So in October of 2019, I set a 66-day challenge for myself. I wanted to read more because what I had been hearing is those that are moving their businesses or their lives forward, they set a time to read. Does anybody else get into the mindset of, I have no time to do anything else? I'm so packed, I'm so busy. Does anybody else have that thought? Yeah. So the way that it worked for me to build in the reading time, because I wrote in bold, my 66-day challenge is I am going to read every day. Well, that constituted my behind getting out of my bed by 6:15, not 6:45. So there was a half an hour's worth of reading in there. And my goal for from 2019, October 2019 to the end of 2020 was to read 12 books. Well, once I got that habit, 27 books later, I was done with 2020. And my morning felt weird if there wasn't reading involved. So if you change your world just a little bit, you can fit more into it. Even if it's 5 minutes of meditation or a half an hour of reading, or Dominic, I think you said you're on James Shaw. I mean, powerful stuff on James Shaw in the mornings. We don't start our morning without 20 minutes with James. I mean, it is a constant. And who knew in January of 2020 that we would need James Shaw? But going to your GPS and your 411, some of these items can be listed as your personal goals that are helping possibly better your business and better your personal life. And it can just be tiny changes. I think a lot of people think about, well, how do these high producers do things in their day at such a high level? We all have the same 24 hours. It's how do we use it and how do we manage it and how do we prioritize it? So if I can suggest one more book, because they both kind of work together, The One Thing, and then Keller Williams has kind of adapted the concepts, which are very similar to The One Thing, of the 12-week year. If you haven't read that, anybody can borrow my copy if you need to, but the 12-week year takes a little bit different look at the 411. And what I was getting caught in when I was building our goals for this year, for me personally and for our team, was which do I pick? Or how do I do both in setting a 411 or dealing with the 12-week year? And what my coach said is just pick one. Just pick one and start. They're both in the same concept. If you're using the 12-week year, what it's really forcing you to do is highly focus every day of every week, so that by the end of the first quarter, you've set some smaller goals. The 411 and the GPS are asking you to set your annual goals, which is great, but I think 2020 taught us some things. We had annual goals going into 2020 for our team. They didn't look the same by the December, because we had to think in shorter spurts, because we just didn't know what was going to happen in 2021 and I think, or in 2020. And I think that's what kind of the logic changed a little bit. So it doesn't matter to me which one you choose, but we need to start talking about how you're writing down what you want to accomplish in a broad scale, and then bringing it to a smaller scale, meaning even a monthly scale, and then the weeks and the days. And when we get to the days, ideally the things that you want to do each day, going back to the one thing, simply by doing those things, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary. Those should really be completed, according to Gary Keller and research, in the morning. How can you win the day before noon? Has anybody ever gotten up and had a massively productive morning and you're like, yes, my laundry's done. I know what we're having for dinner. I've returned some phone calls, and everybody feels like, bring it. I'm good today. That's what your day should be every day if you can control it, as opposed to, the alarm, I'm just going to hit the snooze like 2 more times. And before you know it, an hour's gone, and now you're with a guilty conscience rolling yourself out of bed, and you're already behind. Anybody ever had that? Raise hands. Me.
Definitely. I
Totally.
feel like my thing for 2021 was to wake up earlier, because like I do feel like if I sleep, yeah, I'm well rested, but the day goes on where I have a sense of like, why didn't you just get up? Like, why'd you hit snooze? You feel kind of like you have a lot of I'd have a lot of regret, you know?
100% regret. And it's going to happen. And sometimes, Dominic, in those situations, don't worry about the big jump. If you're saying you want to get up earlier, try 10 minutes earlier and get used to that. You don't need to make a big jump and say, I'm going to be up before the sun, when you're normally up at 8. Just 10 minutes is okay. Get used to that. But what are you putting into that 10 minutes? Is it 10 minutes of getting up and reflection, 10 minutes of journaling, 10 minutes of sit-ups? What are you doing in that 10 minutes? I'm sorry, Mary Kay, I cut you off.
Well, that's to the point, right? I mean, you can get up earlier, but if you're not focused on what you're going to do in that time, I get sucked into this, and
oh, totally. How many people lay in bed and before the light's even on, you're in there?
Guilty.
Okay. Yeah, because you got to know what everybody else is doing. I'm sorry, everyone on this call and in this thing, we all grew up at a point where we didn't know what everybody else was doing, and we're still alive. We can control that. It's just like taking a call. You can control when you get into social. But Mary, to your point, knowing what you're going to do, that's the last thing that you should be doing every night before you put your head on your pillow. meaning that when you're building your 411, it's built there by day. And the 411 is not your to-do list. It's your what you should be accomplishing list so that you feel satisfied at the end of the day and at the end of the week. And then you've got your little sidebar. If anybody else like me, you got Post-it notes all over everything. You love crossing stuff out on a list. But don't get those two confused. So if in our 411, we've got an event coming up with our team. We're doing a trivia night, February 4th. So in that, we had certain benchmarks that we needed to hit on emails being out or questions being written, that type of thing. So they were on our 411 to say, we need 40 trivia questions done by the end of this week. So that was part of our goals. It wasn't like our list. So my laundry list, literally my laundry is not on my 411. You know, those are things that just need to get done. But if you're building your morning routine, if you're going to get up and every morning when you get up, you're going to throw a load of laundry in, that's an intent when you get up. If you're going to get up, I know I want to be on my couch by 6:20 in the morning with my recliner up and my blanket on and my fireplace on, and I read until 7 o'clock. And then 7 o'clock is James Shaw from 7 to 7:20. So now that's my first hour that I know. And there are times when I go to sleep, I'm like, okay, before I hit the couch, I'm gonna get up 5 minutes earlier because I'm going to put a load of laundry in so that it's going while I'm reading. But if you go to bed with a clear knowledge of what your intent is when you get up to win your morning, now that makes getting up a little bit easier because you're not laying in bed with the, what am I going to do today? You know. So you're responsible to yourself and you're responsible to your goals for the morning. Makes sense? Any ahas on that? Anybody going to change anything that they're doing?
Already starting to try. And it just brings back, my mom had a 6th grade education, and one thing she would do every night, she ran a multi-million-dollar flower shop here in town, family business, but she would write down everything before she went to bed. I just remember these plain white sheets of paper, and she would have everything written down. I'm a write and scratch off to girl too.
Yep.
But I remember her also saying, her and my father, like when they were retired, that if it's not done by noon, it's not getting done today.
Not getting done. She's
Yeah.
100% right. Mm-hmm.
That's great.
So that's why, and I love the flower shop I know which flower shop you're talking about. So their Christmas displays are my favorite to go in there. But if you're not finished working, and let's take this to business. I mean, we've talked about personal. If you're not working on your business before noon, you're doing yourself a little bit of a disservice because that's your time that you can protect. So if you're sitting at your desk, and you'll read this in the one thing too, if you're sitting at your desk and you're like, okay, I'm going to call 5 people today. You should have everything you need ready to go. The night before, you should really have those people's names and phone numbers ready to go so that you sit down and here it is. That's your list. And if you can get through those, and I guess we should be saying call to make contact. You know, if you want to contact 5 people, you might need to call 15 to get in contact with 5. 2020 gave us as real estate agents or as friends the ability to connect with more people during that time when everybody was at home. Everybody seems to have switched their work schedules a little bit, where some of their businesses have given them the ability to be flexible. So if you can connect with more people because they happen to be around and they might be able to pick up a call because they're not in a traditional office, that's a blessing. The question, Leanne, if that was a sneeze, bless you. if you're calling, a lot of people have fear of what you'd be calling about, right? What do I get to talk to them about? Anybody had that? Like, I can't call, I have nothing to talk to them about, right? What are the easiest topics to call them about now? Anybody that's been on James Shaw knows the answer to this question.
Themselves, like asking about them.
Care
Like,
calls.
Yeah, care calls.
Care calls. You know, how are you doing? You know, how are things going? Anything I can do to help? You know, type things. Just ask them how they're doing. It's a new year. You know, we've made a lot of transitions. What's happening? Is your family healthy? Don't dive right into real estate conversations. And sometimes if you need to call people that you haven't talked to in a while, that's okay. And you might get questions to say, wow, you're like, why are you calling me out of the blue? I had that making calls last year. But you just say, I was trying to connect with everybody that I knew to make sure that everybody was safe and everybody was healthy. And if there was something that I could do to help, I wanted to make myself available to do that. Simple, easy things that you can, simple, not always easy. You're going to stumble through some calls at the beginning. Your words might sound crazy. You might get off the call and go, oh my God, that was horrid. But by 10 calls in, you've now got a rhythm going and you're choosing your words a lot easier to get through. What's another way, easy way to connect with, and this can go on your 411, like we said, I want to talk to 5 people a day. Didn't James Shaw, didn't they have 555s as well as concepts on some of the calls that we've been on? 5 calls, even 5 texts, and 5 like Facebook messages, or some have done 5 calls, 5 Facebook messages, 5
Handwritten letters.
Hmm?
Handwritten, even letters.
Handwritten notes. Absolutely.
5 emails.
5 emails. Yes. I will say on the handwritten notes, and I used to say that in the Ignite classes when we were together, when we were talking about lead generation or lead follow-ups. And for those of you that are in the business that are newer, handwritten notes are a practice of the past many times. I think that should be brought back in to our regimen a little bit more. And now, can I be stereotypical with all of you with permission without offending anybody? If you are a man and you write a handwritten note, I believe it's going to be very powerful, because the concept of handwritten notes stereotypically and historically is left to the women to do.
But you know, we write with our legs, right?
With your
Yeah.
what?
With my feet. I write with my
Yes,
feet.
that's fine.
I was just gonna say, I feel like I have the worst handwriting. It looks like a child wrote it, but
And
I
that's
did.
okay. But if you wrote it,
Yeah.
it's better than an email.
I used to send them out all the time, and I had a client call me, and she was, that was the nicest thing. No one ever does that. And she, of course, like continued to book with me, but like, I was like, really? How about the handwriting? Like, she didn't care about it.
They don't care. It's the message. It's the action.
It's even more impressive if his child wrote it.
Yeah, true. And if you have childlike
Lydia.
behavior, that's probably what endears you to them anyway. But in a business, nobody does this. So, Dominic, when we talk about care calls, now think back, and I'm sure you guys have been on webinars already or trainings where people have asked you this question. When you reflect back on 2020, how many people, and I want some of you to answer, how many people can you count that called you to ask you how you were? Anybody have some? 4, Leanne? 4? So we haven't used all the fingers on one hand yet. I have one that comes to mind right away, a client of ours that he has reached out probably since this all happened, probably 5 times, and 2 transactions with him. But he was one of the first ones. How are you? How's the family? And I found it astounding. And then one of our home inspectors has reached out as well, but very few, very, very few. So why not you? We have, and this, okay, so if we go to another concept, if we need to make it a little bit easier, and let's go back to Facebook. Okay, so as we're building our day, everybody's on Facebook, right? You look at Facebook in the morning. What else does Facebook tell us about our friends? What else does it tell us? Does it tell us their birthdays?
So, yeah. What's
Birthdays,
going on in their life?
anniversaries,
Pardon me?
birthdays, anniversaries.
Yes. So if we go birthdays, let's key on birthdays, okay? Because they're simple. When you see a birthday on Facebook, what do?
Say happy birthday.
You write it on their timeline, right? But if you really want to kick it up a notch, ooh, you send them a private message, right? And that makes you feel cool. But if you have a personal relationship with that person and they're in your phone as a contact,
Mhm.
you go on? Okay. Why are you not calling them to say happy birthday? Easiest phone call on the planet. Easiest. And you get your reminders on Facebook, right?
Can
What,
I say
Tony?
something? So I was thinking a lot about, I do a lot of that happy birthday on Facebook. I'm like, I'm dime in a dozen. It's like everybody is there celebrating. You have a birthday, you have like 400 wishes. You don't stand out of the crowd. Yes, a phone call for sure will be something to distinguish you. Another thing that I've been thinking about doing, but I haven't yet, is, you know how people say, well, yeah, they saw my Facebook, everybody sees that I have a birthday, that's why they said, that's like they know, that's not like they know. But let's say you do take notes that on this day, you put it in your calendar, this guy has a birthday. And he's a friend of yours that you have his address. How about you handwrite a note and make a reminder in your calendar 2 days before his birthday to mail him a note saying happy birthday, and right around his birthday, right on the actual day, he gets that card. He will know that you know when is his birthday, not you just saw it on Facebook and you're gonna
Yes.
stand out of
Yes,
everybody
yes,
else.
yes.
And that's one thing
how
that I've
can
been
you-
thinking to implement.
Tony, how can you leverage that? So this year, when you see his birthday, well, first off, you can look at birthdays in advance on Facebook. You can get that of what
Okay.
upcoming birthdays are happening. But as a birthday comes up in face, is everybody okay with this conversation? Is this cool for everybody? Okay. If you have, let's just say, Tony, your friend's birthday is today. Okay, you didn't know until it popped up and you're like, oh, yeah, I could have sent him a card. What system does Keller Williams offer us that for next year, we can put the systems in place to remind us early?
Gotta be something with
More fun?
contacts, I would
It's
think.
command.
Yeah.
As soon as you take that information and put that in command for that contact, you can assign them to the birthday smart plan in command. And then 5 days before their birthday, you get an activity reminder on your dashboard in command to say, Tony's birthday's coming. You click on Tony's name and it shows you that his birthday is going to be January 22nd. So you may be putting an activity in there for yourself to say, send Tony a card. So now you're going to know, I need to send Tony a card, and then you can mark that off. And then it'll send you another reminder that says, call Tony, because it'll send it on the 22nd, call Tony on his birthday. Tony's 100% correct. You are layering the effectiveness of what you're doing.
As I'm building like my database in command, like I've been using like my Facebook friends and stuff and
Yes.
shooting out. And then what I've been doing, the extra step, which is kind of cool, which I like, is just like you click on the profile, you go to their about me and for page, and literally half their stuff is there. A lot of people are
All
so
there.
trustworthy.
All there.
And so I've
Best
been
kept
adding
secret
their
in the world.
birthdays into command.
Yep. Yep. Leanne.
I gotta go.
Oh, bye,
Oh.
honey.
Bye-bye.
Dominic, you're 100% correct. The information is there. I would say probably at least 75% of your contacts have got their birthday in there. And as you're going through and putting all your information in command, yes, make sure that you can maximize it. So you're getting their name, their email address, their phone number, their birthday. If you know when they sold their house, or if you in the future have sold their house, that goes in as an anniversary date, because that's another call to say, oh, did you know that you closed on your house a year ago? Wow, how time flies. You can also be sending them a card on that. We can talk about different systems for sending out cards automatically, which is great. But there's these layers that you're having really cool conversations with them. Now, if you're watching Facebook and you're taking notes in command, another powerful thing that I heard as well was watch for things that are happening in their lives. Don't be creepy, but watch for things that are happening in their lives that may be significant that you can take note of. Did they get a puppy? Maybe you send something, a little toy, or was there, an illness that they overcame? Some people have gone through cancer treatments or something like that, where kind of when their anniversary dates are, that they overcame that are significant to them. If you know that and you have a really good relationship with them, that you could call and say, hey, you know what, based on what I see, you've been like cancer free for 5 years. Your anniversary date is around now. If you know that, that's really cool that you could be calling as well. But I think starting with the home anniversaries and the birthdays first, and then the home anniversaries, like these, nobody calls, and it's not a text. It's not an email, it's a call. And I agree with Tony. If there's a card in the mail as well, that's amazing. When you close a property, especially for a buyer, let's talk about this. If you're doing the final walkthrough with a buyer, okay, and they're really excited, right? Because in most cases, they're going within 24 hours, sometimes within an hour, they're going to the closing, right? Because that's where we're doing the final walkthrough. We've made it through the process. Does anybody take a picture of the buyer in front of the house? Yeah.
Before closing.
Before closing. Yeah. So what type of things can be done with that photo? One, we're going to share it with them. 2, we can be posting it. 3, if we ask them for a testimonial, we can be posting that with their testimonial that they love us. On our team, we have a card mailing service that we use, that we can schedule cards to go out in the future. So we take that photo and we attach it to a card that acknowledges that they've been in their home for a year, and we schedule that for a year from now. So we've got a buyer that this week, he closed on Tuesday. So we're scheduling his card to go to his new address. We know it because we just closed the property. We know where they live, for a year from now. So Tony, to your point of sending a card, that's already put in place. We don't have to remember next year to send a card. Because if you're trying to remind yourself of something from a year from now, if you don't have a trigger of some kind, it's gone. If you're anything like me, you got to have a trigger in there. So I think when a lot of you are setting up, we're talking about time management, we're talking about what real estate agents are doing every day, and we kind of got down a little bit of a rabbit hole. But in building your businesses, so many of the new agents on this this class have the ability to set some standards for yourself on how you want to run your businesses and how you want to build your relationships. So if you're looking at, let's look at February, okay, as a whole month, what would you like to accomplish in February that could become part of your 411? Meaning that if you have goals for the year, they should be written there. And then in the month of February, what would you like to accomplish by the end of February? And numbers need to be associated with that. So if you're saying, I want to put 100 people in my database with names, addresses, phone numbers, and birthdays in your database, and I'm referencing Command as a database, does that mean that if you're going to work, let's say 22, 23 days out of the year or out of the month, let's just use easy, if it's 20, you need to then, if I do the math right, you need to put 5 people in your database every day. So if you're talking about 100, by the end of February, when you use that number, that seems kind of daunting, right? 100 people. But when you do the math and you're only putting 5 in a day, that's manageable. So now let's go to the win the morning, where if the first thing that you do when you hit your desk after you've done your either your meditations or your readings or your James Shaw or whatever it is, because what does James say every time he signs off? What does he say? You've got the
Perspiration.
You have the inspiration.
and now go put in the perspiration.
Yeah.
Thank you. I had a brain cramp on it. I've only heard it like 300 times. So that could be your perspiration until those 5 people are in your database with all of the relevant information associated with them and the smart plans attached to them to help you move forward. Nothing else works. Nothing else is necessary. It's all just a distraction until those 5 things are done. If that's your one thing. Because if we go back to the one thing, the question that we asked at the beginning is, what's the one thing that you can do such by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary. So it might be 5 people in your database, and part of that expectation may also be, I'm going to call those 5 people. I'm going to call them. I'm going to connect with them. I'm going to confirm that the information is correct that I have. And I'm going to move on to the next one. Because what James Shaw and what Gary Keller and everybody else says, until we are effectively communicating with our database 4 times a year, once a quarter, 4 times a year with a call, there's no need to be buying leads from anywhere else until you have solid relationships. So does that make sense on how to, does everybody understand what I'm talking about in a 411, or do we need to go back there a little bit more and talk about the 411? We understand the 411? We good? Okay. So what I really think is necessary for all of you to do is look at those goals, start to set the goals, and in a lot of ways, let's only worry about this quarter. Granted, we have a few days left in January, but what would you like to do by the end of March? By March 31st, what could be completed? What would make you feel successful by the end of March? It's a lot less daunting than the whole year, right? You can have some goals for the year, but let's deal with what we need to do between now and the end of March. What would be successful? What do some of you think could be successful by the end of March? I'd love to hear what you think.
I would love to have a closing by the end of March. That's a
Okay.
goal.
Okay. Do you have people in your pipeline that are ready to write an offer in the next 3 weeks?
No.
Then you need to find them. Are you saying a sales closing or a rental closing? Which one are we talking about?
Either or. Sorry, I gotta grab the phone real quick.
Yeah, get the phone. Book the appointment. Anybody else?
Yeah, I had to, do more like a lead generation for March and April.
Yes,
Sometimes you never know the closing is going to happen,
that you are 100% correct.
because I lost
Anything
like
can
2 because with the buyers, some issues. So I lost like 2. So it was this at the end of the, just that day I came to know like, oh, we are not closing. So it was so
Don't
sad.
spend the money until you got the check, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just saying, oh, I have this and this, but we don't know. We have to be ready, with other, lead generation. Just continue, with our efforts.
And
Yeah.
through Ignite, have any of you connected with each other to kind of set up an accountability relationship? Anybody connected to say, hey, I would like to, kind of be your accountability partner, where either, every morning you're checking in with each other, or you're seeing if there's something that can be done to, help everybody reach their goals. If you have someone, anybody have ever go to a gym, work out? Yeah. Is it easier to go to the gym when someone is there waiting for you?
Yeah. That's
Or
easy.
you have to meet a trainer.
Me and
But-
Mary are keeping each other accountable to getting
Yeah.
healthy in 2021.
Who are?
Me and Mary. Yeah.
By November, people. Fantastic. That can be really powerful. It can be really helpful if you know that you have to answer to somebody else. But you also have to give each other permission to ask the hard questions on the why. Now, Dominic and Mary, if you're holding each other accountable or as accountability partners, have either of you yet written a 411 or a 12-week year concept, a document? Is there anything that shows your annual goals, your monthly goals, and your weekly goals?
I have.
You have?
I have not.
You have one, Mary? Dominic, sure.
I got the bold planner, so yeah,
Yes, and they're in the front of the bold planner, right? Okay, so you're an accountability partner with Dominic, correct? Has Dominic seen your 411?
no.
How can he help you?
Well, I guess I can help him by making a copy of it and making him fill his
See?
own out.
There you go.
And a copy of mine.
If you have an accountability partner, they can't help you effectively unless they know what you need to do. That my coach sees mine. So, I mean, if you could easily do it, if you wanted to transition it to a Google Drive, if you wanted to do something like that, you could put it in a Google Drive. I use colors on mine. Green means it's complete, yellow means it's in process, and red means, uh-oh, haven't gotten to that one yet. The system, however you use, whatever you do, if you take a screenshot of it on your phone and send it to them, that works too. There's no rule. But if
The
you're
template for the template for the 411 is in the chat right now for you guys.
Lydia rocks. Lydia rocks. Anybody else in accountability partners? If you don't have one, chat with leadership at the office or chat with each other, you know who's on here, and set up some relationships. You never know where those are going to go. Make sense?
Yeah, a lot of us on the call are on like Kim's like Cappers Club.
Yeah.
So we meet like every day, and then we have like subgroups outside of that. So it helps.
All good. All good. The other piece that we kind of talked about, but we didn't name specifically in all this when we're talking about creating the 411s is time blocking. And we touched on it, but without using the phrase, when you get up in the morning, what are you going to do? But when you are working on lead generation, Shaheen, if it's, between 8 and 10 in the morning, if you're working on lead generation, that means that incoming calls are not being taken in most cases, unless it has to do with lead generation. But if other agents are calling with things, you're not taking that. You're in your time block. And if you're in your time block, wherever that is, if you're at your desk or in an office or wherever you're doing your work, all of your provisions, whatever you need, if you need water, if you need a snack, if you need a tissue, if you need anything, it's all there around you so that you don't have to get up and wander around looking for things, because now you've broken your concentration. And if you're working with somebody, or if you're in a house, if you're working from home and you've got others around, you have to do your very best to say, I'm in my bunker. I'm in my lead generation bunker right now, or I'm in my time block for 2 hours. Daddy's going to be in his office for 2 hours. The house can blow up around you in an ideal concept, and you're not coming out of that bunker. And everybody needs to understand that. And we did that on a team where if, we're in our bunker and we don't answer the phone, nobody's allowed to get angry because you didn't answer the phone. Because if they look and go, oh, it's between 8 and 10, well, Jean's on the phone. Don't bother me. That makes sense? That's really getting hyper-focused and not letting the rest of the world in, so that you can, again, win the day by noon. And then in the afternoon, Gary usually says, you're working on your business. You're lead generating in the morning, and then in the afternoon, you're also, kind of marketing and looking for extra business. That might be when you're placing some of your ads. That might be when you're answering other emails from co-op agents. All of that to support your current business is done in the afternoon. The morning is looking for more business. Makes sense? What did I not cover that anybody would like to go? Oh, the other thing that I wanted to go, the 80-20 rule in Pareto's principle, that it's saying that, I'm just going to read this, that Pareto's principle, or the 80-20 rule, can help prioritize and focus on what's important. Pareto was an Italian economist. He discovered that 20% of our activities yield 80% of our results. So you have to figure out what that 20% is so that you can concentrate on that. You will hear phrases around the office. Sometimes if you're on my team, you'll hear it where someone asks us to do something. I may reply and go, that's not my 20%. What's your 20% that's giving you the highest amount of return? And if you can leverage some of the 80%, that's what is best to do. If you need to address envelopes, for some reason, or put stamps on things, is that your 20%? Or do you have someone in your household that can effectively put stamps on an envelope for you, or stuff envelopes for you? Something like that. My kids have done that. I will look at them and go, I buy you food and your key fits the door. So here you go. Leverage when you can.
Or better yet, you can pay them.
Huh? No, I don't pay them. I feed them. So now we do have, he probably just walked into the house. He's probably in my kitchen now. I'm not sure. He knows where the key is. But we chose in our geographic farm, which we've got about 1,500 homes in our geographic farm around where we live, that I was mailing to them for years. And I get a lot of mailers back because we were using the county records for our mail. And Cook County is notorious for being way behind on who owns what property. So I get a lot of returned postcards. And every one of those is, cents out of my pocket or dollars out of my pocket. So I wanted to make sure that the information that I was handing out was getting to the homes. So I decided over the summer, I was just going to hire someone to farm my neighborhood. Like all those guys that walk around and put like the cable TV stuff on your door, or, whatever the promotion is. He's out today. I hired somebody to make sure that our door hangers for our trivia night are on 1,500 homes. I know they're getting on the door now. They're not getting returned to me. And I saved money on postage in the process by doing that. I also leveraged some sponsors, so they helped me pay for some of it too. So I didn't make it. My goal was to have enough sponsors with coupons and stuff on those door hangers so that we didn't pay anything. They just paid the guy that was doing them. But I didn't win on this one. I'll see if I win on some more of them. But leverage what you can so that you're not out. If I had to do 1,500 homes, it would probably take me 4 or 5 days to do that. So figure out how you can leverage what you can so that you're spending your time on your 20%. And that should always be, first off, lead generation is always your 20%. Because if you're not working with listing agreements or purchase contracts, has everybody been to Joe's contract class? Tony, what does Joe say? If you're not working with contracts, what are you?
No, I don't know what are you, but I have been to Joe's class more than 5 times.
Oh yeah, I'm married to him and I still go to his class. But he says if you're not working with contracts, whether it's a listing agreement or a purchase contract, you're unemployed.
Exactly.
It's Joe's black and white. No contract, you're unemployed. So how do we get ourselves in relationships? And leases could be in there too, to build a tenant-landlord relationship in there too. How do you find the people that are ready, willing, and able to purchase? And having the conversations with them to determine when they're ready to go. I had somebody tell me last week that she was going to have us over to take a look at her house because for some reason we seem to have a 2-step process that we've fallen into where we have to do the preview, to tell them what they need to do. And then we finally come back with the listing documents. I talked to her earlier this week. She's like, well, I want to have you come over when it gets warmer outside so I can put my dogs outside. Warmer like 26 degrees or warmer like 70? What are we talking about and what are we waiting for? Like, that was, to me, just the most extraordinary excuse I'd heard in a while until it gets warmer. Okay, that's not going to work. We're going to figure that out. But determine how you can, and I think just making these care calls, getting yourself into a habit of talking to people every day is going to get you closer, because what you focus on expands, like the bold law says. As soon as you start talking to people, it's interesting that the universe just starts saying, oh, this is happening. Oh, over here. And if you get comfortable and slow down to say, I've got business and I've got listings, so I don't need to call anybody anymore, that cycle is going to dip, because eventually they're not going to be there. You have to keep up that cycle in order for you to have a predictable business and fill your 411 with those activities that are going to support it. Make sense? Anything else? Lydia, are we okay with the content?
Perfect.
Anything else? Questions? What actions is anybody going to take today on your 411 to move yourself forward? What's somebody going to do? Anybody?
I'm gonna revisit it and make sure it's where it should be.
And measurable things.
Measurable.
Don't speak in generalities on a 411. Measurable,
Yeah.
measurable content.
And send it to Dominic.
I was just gonna say I'm gonna complete the 411, but like I love in this class, I like just the importance of starting your day the night before. I started doing that like a little bit, and I do feel it sends up like a sense you feel even more accomplished. Like just because I like to work out in the morning, so I'm like, and I have to get that in if I want to feel productive. If I'm spending 30 minutes figuring out what to wear to the gym, that's like a waste. So it's like so important to lay it out.
Gym look is very important.
Yes, of course. You represent you.
Yes.
Is that
Night
why?
before.
Is that why some days you don't post a video, Jean?
Yeah. It's just not a good look. That's right.
I like what James Shaw says about taking control of your bell.
Yes. Like
How
school
we all grew up on that timetable at school. When the bell rings, you go to your next thing. And I've been really trying to focus on that, because my time gets hijacked, and I need to take control of that.
Yep. Queen of hijacking right here. Queen of hijacking. Absolutely. Anybody else? All right. You know what? I can
jump
hear
on
my leverage in my.
jump on my phone. I'm gonna make some calls. This is what I'm gonna do.
Get it, Tony the realtor.
Oh, I wanted to say one more thing about the 411 that I just remembered from one of the trainings that I thought was great, because I am one of those people that has to write everything down and scratch it off, and how your 20% is on the front side of your 411. Your 80% is on the back side.
Yes. That is a Jenny Wolick thing, that you do your 20% first and everything else goes on the back in a to-do list. Absolutely. Good call. All right, friends, go get it. Feel free to check in. Let me know what you're doing. If you need any help, I'm always here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for everything.
Thank
It was
you so
wonderful.
much.
Awesome.
Finally
Thank you so much for
Thanks,
your time.
Jean.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.